before we start with the session, I would like to introduce you to Mona. She is a Sales Decision Solution Partner at Forrester, and she's going to talk about sales and marketing alignment and why it's so crucial for the revenue growth. Over to you, Mona.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for hanging in there. And always difficult to be the last speaker, but I'm super excited that you're able to join us. I'm really excited. I'm actually joining you guys from Australia. I'm just going to share my screen, so hopefully you can see my presentation. And thank you for the lovely introduction. So just to give a little bit of background, I look after the Serious Decision portfolio at Forrester, and we help sales, marketing, and product leaders align what we call their revenue engine to ensure that they're driving profit and revenue. And there's 5 ways that companies can grow. So if you look at most companies, most organizations, especially in the B2B space, they can add a new product, add a new service, go into a new market, mergers and acquisitions, and productivity. So those 5 ways that companies grow is the research and the insights that we gather. And so what I wanted to do today is share some insights that we have and look at some techniques. And I can hear quite a few presentations today, people talking about alignment, which is really crucial, especially as you're trying to engage in this virtual world. We're all trying to get used to. You just sometimes don't know where to look on a video screen or but it's really important to ensure that as you're dealing internally with your organization, your sales engine, your marketing engine, and your product and service engine are all speaking the same language, all aligned in terms of what they need to focus on and how they want to market. So the kinds of areas that I want to cover off is looking at the 2 functions specifically, the marketing leader and the sales leader, and the things they need to do to put in place to get on the same page. So if we look briefly at what does the marketing leader look like and what do they do? What's their roles and responsibilities? And obviously the titles may be different in the organization. It's not always a CMO. It could be a head of, could be a regional lead. It could be a VP or even a marketing leader. But within your organization, the person that's tasked with marketing, typically what they do is they focus on creating and communicating and delivering the value of what your product and service, and ensuring they're aligning behind potential buyers and your current customers, but also if you've got a third party or others that on-sell or supply your services, business partners. So they've got a real and strong drive to get people to understand who they are, what they do from an organizational perspective. And the way that they measure, the things that they get measured on in that role, typically is revenue growth. But from a marketing leader, you'll hear terms come up like sourced or influenced pipeline. And that's the lead generation engine. So how many leads they're bringing into the funnel or into the business and converting into sales opportunities. Other things that the marketing leader typically gets measured on is things like, and again, it depends. It's not that they do all of these, but it depends on your organization. But revenue per customer, retention rates. So how are you retaining customers? If you've got a SaaS model, it's monthly recurring revenue. The lifetime value of the customer, how much they're coming back and repurchasing from you. And the all-important one that everybody seems to want to measure on is customer satisfaction. So are they satisfied with your product and service? There's a variety of different tools out there, Net Promoter Score and others. But so that also falls under the retention rate. So as you can see, it is varied, but it is very much focused on the customer or the buyer in mind, the revenue that you're driving, and the pipeline that you're sourcing for the business. If we have a look at the sales leader, again, the salesperson has different titles in the organization, but typically the person that heads up the sales organization, again, they're also looking at go-to-market strategies, but from a slightly different angle. They're looking at delivering on the corporate goals, business growth. They're looking at ensuring that the marketing and the product teams are robust to support the customer needs. They won't typically get involved in marketing other than saying we need more leads, we need more opportunities, How do I fill my pipeline? How do I ensure that my sales team have got enough to do so they're calling or meeting or, progressing opportunities? So the sales leader typically is looking at acquiring customers, but also supporting customers. And again, the things that typically the sales leader gets measured on, again, revenue growth is a big one. So there's two there that can get alignment on. But things like the average deal size, the sales enablement initiatives, how do they enable their own sellers and sales teams, the sales quota, and obviously, typically the biggest bugbear is forecasting and ensuring forecasting is done accurately. If they go through a third party or a channel, there's additional things they need to look at. The types of partners or channels that they're engaging with. How do we enable those partners to be able to sell, the profit margins and so on? So slightly different areas which can cause a lot of confusion, a lot of disconnect, especially when a marketing person or a leader is talking about certain ways of measuring and a salesperson or a leader is looking at a different way of measuring. So how do we address this? Well, let's have a quick look at where it fails. And these are typically, again, through research that we've done, we hear from our clients across APAC, across the regions, and obviously globally. But it really does fall, and I'm sure you've heard it a few times today, it falls on the unbalanced focus. That is, the things that marketing and the sales teams aren't, focused in terms of the one thing they should be measuring, or the three core areas. The other thing is marketing, in an effort to try and please the rest of the organization and be there as a catch-all, it's the unwillingness or the difficulty in saying no because you want to be seen as a team player, which also, sometimes some salespeople want to do everything and they want to be able to talk to different customers and be part of that whole customer journey. So sometimes doing everything and being everything for everyone is really difficult. So you do need to be very specific of what you're going to measure and how you're going to work together. And that all equates to the misalignment of efforts as you're trying really hard to do the right thing, focus on driving, revenue. Being spread too thin doesn't help because you can't say no. Not being focused on which areas that you want to target, industries, customer types, or so on. All comes down to having a disagreement or misalignment on efforts. And so we recommend a few things to help alleviate that. If you're in a marketing role, and really this is coming from the marketing angle, is agree on the role that the marketing business or section is going to play within the organization. So are you going to be driving revenue? Are you focusing on new prospects? Or is the majority of your marketing efforts going to be, especially now where we're dealing with COVID, is it around retaining those customers and keeping customers so you don't lose them? In fact, we're finding a lot of organizations across APAC are really doubling down and focusing on customers. So that 80-20 where you're looking at prospects and 20% on current customers is changing, because you don't want to lose them. And it's difficult to get people to buy when budgets are being cut. People are trying to keep their jobs, so it's better to keep the customers that you've got. So you have to agree what role marketing is going to play, within your organization. The other thing that we recommend is defining a framework for mapping those objectives. So the sales leader and the marketing leader must come together to agree on, again, common things and common frameworks and common ways you're going to be capturing data, especially across the organization, so that you're measuring the right things, you're focused on the right industries or opportunities, and you're going after the right buyer for your products and services. And finally, and definitely not limited, this isn't the last thing that you do across the way, is what does success look like? So you have to agree what your KPIs and your outcomes, and they're similarly aligned. There will be one or two that will differ in each roles, but at least 3 of them should be aligned. So if you're measuring, how many opportunities you're bringing in, the marketing leader and the sales leader should also have the same kind of measurements around that. So in terms of a regional leader, so this is where, especially in the roles that we have, where we have potentially an APAC-wide leader, and you're in India, you're in Singapore, you're in Australia, it doesn't matter really, and you're trying to align behind it. You also have to think of that matrixed approach. So it becomes a little bit more complex when you're not aligning to maybe your corporate or your corporate goals, but you also have to align to your regional roles and then potentially country roles. It depends on the organization you have. So you have to map, the core one here is also mapping the regional resources. So you've agreed in the first instance, okay, we know what our role is, we've defined the objectives, we know what our KPIs are and how we're going to measure, but ensure that you're resourced up. You know, you don't want to be set up for failure. Make sure that you've got the right resources. They could be internal or external, or people that can work together. So ensuring that you have the agreed upon resources. That could be budget, that could be personnel, or outsourcing to a third party that can help you achieve your goals, and be realistic about what you can measure and what you can do. So there was a couple of things in terms of balancing competing objectives too. So you saw that in the earlier slides I mentioned the marketing leader and the sales leader are both measured on revenue growth. The way that they measure may be different though. So you have to, again, define those objectives, and the metrics that you put together have to be equal. So I just wanted to deep dive a little bit in terms of measuring and metrics, because that's really, really important. Within Serious Decisions, we have a metric spectrum, but what that really means is, are you looking at percentage growth? Are you looking at new business? Are you looking how to communicate those results? And the key part of all of that is ensuring that the data and the insights that you're getting is aligned, and you're not, so for example, if sales are using a CRM, that marketing is able to tap into that data and not creating a different data set for the similar client where you're not getting that holistic insight. So ensuring that there's consistency along that path is really, really important. So some key takeaways, and I know we've got limited time because it was 10 minutes, there's a lot behind here that we could go into, but driving marketing, sales and product alignment is key, or service alignment. So ensuring those three functions internally have agreement on what they're going to measure, who they're going to target, and how they want to go to market is vitally important. Using a common shared language, consistency in your frameworks or terminology. So if you define a lead, what does that mean? Everybody understands what a lead means, how you're going to target a particular persona, or are you targeting the marketing leader within the organization, the CIO, whoever? Make sure everybody understands that. So that's having that common shared language. And the other thing is try to, as if you're on a marketing function, don't be reactive. Try to set up marketing as a strategic function, as a business partner within the organization. So you're not just seen as the part of the organization you go to when you need collateral, or little giveaways, or I need budget for an event. If we used to do physical events, be seen as a strategic player and helping drive the business. They're key things that you should be looking at. Other things you need to do, and I mentioned this earlier, identify and engage with the right buyers, so you're not wasting effort, especially with limited budgets, so you can attract and accelerate the right prospects at the right stages, and build demand, content, messaging and strategies that are aligned. So as the marketing person's building the campaigns and marketing efforts, enable your sales teams first, get them to understand what you're doing and how you're doing it, so that when you do the digital marketing or other activities to drive that awareness, your sales team can understand and speak in the same language as they're getting those leads, and they can better articulate it. And actively, activate and deliver impact by training your team. So I think in the previous one, the session, the gentleman was talking about motivating your team and building trust. But if you also have to, enable them and give them the right tools to be successful. So that goes into a little bit, I guess, on developing the top talent and execution. But these are things that I've already said. So a few questions that you may want to, as you're thinking about what you need to do, evaluate your capability and resources within your regional role. Apply the right, objectives and reach agreement between the marketing and the sales leader. Make sure that you have common and regular meetings, so it's not just a one-off activity you do once a year. Have regular cadence, monthly, weekly check-ins to make sure you're on track. Provide a clear objective, not only to the leaders but throughout your organisation, and ensure that the prioritisation process, what you're going to be focused on, is done consistently. Things that you should be addressing as you're building this. How do you report the results? If you're in a marketing role or a sales role, how aligned are you? Like truly aligned, as in, if you're in a marketing role and you had to explain what the salesperson does, can you do that? And vice versa. Are you confident to say, well, I know that the sales leader's focus is A, B, and C, 1, 2, and 3, and vice versa, yeah? And measure marketing's contribution to the organisation. That almost gets forgotten, because every time, if you're in a marketing role, every time you get asked, what's the marketing ROI? Show them how you do that by being aligned. And ensure that your marketing strategy is, and it sounds like a no-brainer, but it's so common that a lot of people don't do this. Ensure that it's aligned to the corporate objectives. That will give you clear guidance in what you should be focused on. Hopefully that's given you some things and some food for thought to kind of look at. If you want to get in touch, my email's there, my LinkedIn I think has been put up there. I'm more than happy to continue the conversation, and hopefully I'll hand it back to you if you've got any questions.
Sure, Mona. Thank you so much for such a detailed presentation on the marketing and sales alignment. I hope it will be very, very useful for the people when we put that up in the resources page as well.
Yeah, we can share those for sure. Yeah.
So we'll take up a few questions that we have here, not a few, actually quite a lot of them. So let's start with that. So the first question that we have is, what is the most important metric that you need to measure to ensure that sales and marketing teams are aligned and they're contributing to our revenue growth?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on the organisation, but the one that's common, the one that tends to be the most is contribution, revenue growth. So it's not, from a marketing perspective, you have click-through rates, download rates. That's great. Nothing wrong with measuring that. But when you're talking to a sales language, it's these activities has contributed to the revenue of the organisation. So it's really about the revenue growth. That's probably the most important one.
Got it. Understood. So the next question that we have is, inefficient processes that arise, ultimately wasting time creating content without a clear objective. How to break the silos among teams? Yeah, so again,
so you're right. It does become, time wasting when you're creating content as a marketer and you're thinking you're going down the right path because, for example, you're maybe focusing on the financial sector in a marketing capacity and you're doing all this great work and doing all this great, digital, yet your sales teams are focused on manufacturing, for example. So that's why alignment, understanding the industries, the personas, who you're targeting, and also remember in the B2B buying mindset, it's not one person you're targeting. It's sometimes a group or of individuals. It's up to 6 to, I think the latest stats was anywhere between 6 to 11 different decision makers in a buying process. So have a real understanding on who you're targeting. And that's what the initial agreement about aligning the objectives is all about. And then that way, when you're creating the content, you're not missing the mark. You're hopefully all going down the finance path, the manufacturing, depending on which one your organization picks.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. So the next question that we have is, most companies align with their sales enablement. Is that the new standard of measuring efficiency?
It's really vitally important, and I'm glad that question came up. It's vitally important to enable sales. So, and the responsibility of sales enablement isn't just a sales function. It really does also fall under marketing, because as you're developing a product or service, you're packaging it up, you're doing the messaging. I mentioned earlier that it's really important to ensure that your sales teams aren't just given, here's the brochure. Explain to them why you've picked that particular persona, how to position, questions you should be asking. So when you're doing your telemarketing, sales enablement becomes really critical in that process. So yeah, I think it's vitally important that you do that. And marketing, even if it doesn't report into you, it's vitally important you're aligning with the person that does own sales enablement and support them in helping them develop the training that's needed or the tools that's needed.
Next question seems to be pretty interesting. So the question is, the way the B2B buying process has evolved has resulted in being more complex buying cycle. So how
That's
can
right.
we rectify that alignment between sales and marketing teams specifically for this case?
So a lot of things that marketing could help in the B2B buying process, and it's true, it has evolved. It is more complex. B2B buyers are a little bit more savvy. They do their own research. They've had several touch points prior to making a decision or even coming to you guys for an answer. So you need to recognize that the organization or the function within your organization that has insights into that is the marketing team, through the digital tactics, through search, through other means. So when you're really important to map what you think is the buying process for yours, for your product or service, and look to where marketing can provide the insights along that journey. So, the prior consideration stage to the decision stage, it's really vital that that you're also not just targeting the one buyer, because as I mentioned earlier, there's more than one decision maker now in the buying cycle, and the buying cycle isn't linear. It could be, different models in different ways and different buying. So are you selling to a committee? Are you selling to, different individuals? So understanding, we do also do a lot of research around that. You can find it up on our website, but certainly happy to help there. But it really is critical that marketing be is able to provide that, and working with marketing to be able to do that.
So we'll take just one last question, Mona, before we end the session. So we have this question is a little bit away from aligning marketing and sales per se. It's on how we bring sales alignment to our branding activities. So how do we justify the qualitative aspects of brand like marketing?
Yeah. So I guess that's a funny one. So how do we ensure? So how often do you bring your sales team to understand what the brand promise is? Brand promise. I'll put that in brackets because obviously, what does your brand stand for? How often do you actually enable your staff? Even it doesn't have to be anything formal. It could be something like this, where you say to them, what does our company stand for? What are our values? How do we articulate that? If you were to talk to your friend or colleague, how would you describe what our brand does? So, in terms of engaging in that way, I think it's really important. It's brand is one of those things in the B2B world that people assume we don't need to do a lot of work because it's more consumer type, but you do. You still need to be able to get your prospects and your sales team to be able to position it in the right way. So there's a bit of work there that we could be doing.
Right. That's right. Okay, thank you so much, Mona. Thank you for the amazing detailed presentation that we have had. I'm hoping that it'll help a lot of sales and marketing teams to get to the revenue goal that they have set for their businesses. And also thank you so much for going through all the questions that we have. We have a few more of them. I'll send it over to you.
Happy to answer any after if you need. That's fine.
That would be great. Thank you everyone for joining in today for our APAC edition. And I hope to see you all in our future